It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome to another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders, and it is a Friday, which means it's DB Day, and it's DB Day for two reasons. One, because it's Friday. Two, it's his favorite day of the NFL draft. Yes, much like me, I talk about this every year. I enjoy rounds 2 and 3. More picks, less time in between them. Day 2 is the better day. DB, how we feeling?
This is where you win the draft, baby. Yes, absolutely. Best day of draft weekend by far. It's Friday. We got the weekend coming up. There's just a lot to be excited about. I know the Pittsburgh Steelers could potentially have quite the wait until they actually get on the clock again tonight, just based on where they're currently slated to pick. But yeah, a lot of really good prospects still on the board. I've talked at length about this draft being one that has an unusual amount of like day 2 type of grades. And it's definitely got quality depth in that regard. So I'm excited to see all these prospect pairings.
And Alan, I'm used to having you up here with me and DB below us, but being that you're on an afternoon drive right now, I figured we'd put you below on your own island.
Not an afternoon drive, just an afternoon sitting in the parking lot at UPMC Rooney Sports Complex as we're waiting to see if Derrick Harmon's going to show up today or if he's going to talk to us. Obviously, our thoughts with him and his family dealing with the death of his mother after he was drafted last night. So that's tough, not expecting that to happen, really, honestly. But here in case it does, so hanging out in the ride while I wait.
Yeah, okay, well, that's way too long of a name for a podcast. We can't say Steelers waiting in UPMC complex for potential draft pick conversation. So that doesn't make for as good of a podcast name. So anyways, we got to talk about the Derrick Harmon pick. Obviously, like you said, our thoughts are with Derrick Harmon on unimaginable loss. What, was simultaneously the best day of his life and also the worst day of his life. Just cannot imagine having to go through that and the roller coaster of emotions. But the football player that the Steelers are getting, obviously, we've all put our thoughts out there in separate ways across different platforms since the selection was made, but we're all in one place now. And DB, I'll start with you here in terms of just how you feel about the selection, where he fits in. And honestly, a question that somebody asked me, and I really wasn't sure exactly what avenue to attack it. In terms of like the amount of playing time do you think he sees in year 1?
Yeah, I think it was an easy pairing to kind of see over the last couple months. Just makes a lot of sense given the Steelers needed the position, like some of the things that he does really well. And just I do think that he's going to be a guy that can contribute like relatively early. I expect him to come in, compete for a starting job outside of camp, like right outside of camp. And then, eventually, hopefully one day turn into a pretty good starter for the Steelers defense. So there's a lot to like about Harmon's game. He was my number 22 overall player. They select him at 21. So I like the value. I like the fit for the player. And I'm really excited that he's, in black and gold. And hopefully, I'm just praying for his well-being more than anything right now, just like mental health wise with everything that he's got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan, how did you feel about this? I mean, it was a selection that you predicted on your final mock draft. A lot of people had it. How do you feel about the fit of Derrick Harmon in Pittsburgh?
Perfect fit. That Oregon defense that they call mint puts him in a lot of situations that are very similar to what the Steelers do between the 5-tech in base and the 3-tech in sub packages. Usually when you're looking at getting a college defensive line prospect, you'll be finding a guy who's done a lot of one or the other. This is a pretty rare guy that's done a lot of both. Obviously played all 3-tech before he got to Oregon when he was at Michigan State. But I think it's an easy transition to the Steelers defense. He is just a replacement for Larry Ogunjobi in terms of role 1-to-1. I think he'll be a starter in base, and then it'll be a combination of Cam and Keanu Benton and him in the sub packages, rotating through and mixing some Mon Adams as well. But there's plenty of playing time there to go around. When you look at what the Steelers are doing and how they're building this team, we've talked about it a lot. Like they're copying notes from the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, maybe one or two guys on those Eagles play more than 50% of snaps in the front seven. All the rest of them are rotating. And so I think, that should be the expectation that you're going to have multiple waves of defenders on that front seven.
When you have him and Benton on the field together, what do you think that looks like? Like, are they interchangeable in your opinion? Like, which way will they utilize both of those guys when they're on the field together?
Probably not what I'd call interchangeable. Like, if you want to run like a 4-3 under front or a 4-man under front, like, you better have Benton as the one tech, not Harmon. But like, other than that, like, yeah, I mean, they're pretty much all of the Steelers' defensive linemen are pretty much interchangeable, with the sort of exception that like guys like Adams and Benton can do a little bit more in terms of playing the nose. But man, I think all the rest of them can do all the other jobs pretty much.
DB?
Yeah, I mean, I expect Harmon to be more the 3 tech, and it seems like they're going to keep Ben at nose tackle. One thing I will say is, with how much, sub-package football, 4-man front, how many over fronts they play just in nickel, that is going to mean that player is going to have to play as a 1 tech, as a shade, and Harmon's actually done that in college, and I actually think that he's way more suited from a body type and just skill set perspective to hold up in there. Some of the problems that the Steelers ran into at times last year was when they had Ben and Ogunjobi, and they would have them both in the game at the same time with Cam Hayward off the field. And then both those guys kind of get bounced around a little bit in the A gaps. So Harmon gives you more stability. He's got a more proven ability to 2-gap, to lock, shed, peek, get his eyes back in the backfield. And he's honestly somebody that I think will hold up against double teams fairly well, really from day one. So I think as a run defender, it makes a lot of sense, especially when you take into the account, like Alan said, just the philosophy of building through the trenches. I think that connection is obvious to make. They draft 2 straight offensive tackles in the first round, come back and get a defensive tackle this year. And then just in general, the lasting kind of reflection on the playoff loss being what it is, with the Ravens kind of running all over them. I'm sure that did not sit well with a lot of people higher up in that building, because, it's one of those things when you kind of get punked out like that on a national stage by your division rival to put you out of the playoffs. I think that stings, and this is kind of something that will help ease those concerns a little bit next year.
One of the things I like in that regard is that, yeah, you can look at it in that spectrum and say, yes, the Steelers got roughed up by the Ravens, 299 rushing yards, and then they're going to go draft a defensive lineman because of that. But also, like, they didn't just draft some, like, plugger that's, like, I think Harmon's actually probably more advanced pass rushing than he is run defending. He's definitely a 3-down player. So while they invested in the defensive line, it's not like this was a knee-jerk reaction and a player that's not going to be useful in other areas of the game as well.
Yeah. The one of the knocks that we saw on him, other than, well, I want to bring up the other here in a second, but the missed tackle percentage gets into the backfield a ton, but had some issues finishing plays. Wanted to ask you just like how you feel like that transition is going to go for him there. Is that similar to like what we've seen in the past, right? With like Ryan Shazier, obviously different position, but like a guy that was always around plays but didn't make them right away. Bud Dupree, right? Like some over pursuit stuff. Do you think that's the issue with Harmon, or what do you think that number is so large for? Is Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like he's not like the world's best athlete. Like he's not like super bendy. I think you can see some times where like he gets free in the backfield, but then like there's a guy with some wiggle that he can't necessarily deal with. But I'm not concerned about the missed tackle rate. I think it's it's not like the guy can't tackle. It's just more about like super athletic guys that he can't necessarily deal with in space.
DB?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably like the other stuff that I think he can clean up. Like he can definitely further, refine his pass rush plan. I'd like to see him transition quickly more to his counters a little bit better, getting ready for the snap, pre-snap, some other things like that. But those are all like really fixable things, like the pad level thing. I mentioned that in the article, my scouting report that I did for SteelersNow.com. I think that the one thing that is just going to have to be worked around is like he just is stiff, like in his lower half. Like you see it when he does get that penetration immediately in the backfield. It just, he doesn't necessarily have like the lower body flexibility to kind of be able to gear down, change directions, and then, get himself in position to make the tackle. That's why you see the 27% missed tackle rate. I don't think he has like a ton of bend through contact either, but aside from like the stop-start quickness and just some of that stuff, I still think that there's value in him being like a disruptor that gets up the field. Like he does have enough kind of hops off the ball to where he can get on blockers' edges. Like Alan said, I don't think he's like got anything overwhelming about his athleticism, but he more than checks the boxes. And then what really gets you excited is like just his frame, his upper body strength, the length, the heavy hands, the flashes of good hand usage as a rusher and as a run defender. So there's a lot to like. There will be some stuff that naturally you have to work around, but we're talking about the 21st overall pick in a below average draft class. I think that that's one of the important things to keep in mind here. Like there's not a lot of guys that were better at this position than he was.
Absolutely. The other thing that I wanted to bring up kind of like within that too was the injury stuff, right? Like, I'm not privy to the medical information. And so I don't really like to bake that into the way that I'm evaluating a player, but like specifically for the Steelers, when you look at, like Faatanu last year obviously had some red flags. They also took him in the first round. And I think there's a difference between like stopping a slide for a guy that had some injuries, like, with the case of Washington, Peyton Wilson, they've stopped those slides from injury concerns. But now in back-to-back years, they've taken guys that maybe weren't on other teams' boards or were significantly lower down because of that. Alan, do you think that that's just like, that just goes to show how much they love the player? Is there anything that you can say about, like, I'm not going to say this trend, but 2 years in a row now where they've taken guys that have those injury flags?
Yeah, I think no, I don't think it's like you can love a player enough to draft him if you have injury red flags. Either you're comfortable with the injuries or not. I think it's pretty clear that the Steelers are comfortable with his injury. The one thing about that specific injury is that guys can just play with it for a very long time. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that he needs surgery or that it will impact his game. I think George Kittle's has been torn since like 2018 or something like that. Like, I will take George Kittle all day long. So, I mean, like, I just think being on the outside, it's really hard to like evaluate whether it's a big deal or not. But like, just because it exists doesn't mean that it is a big deal.
Yeah. And by the way, you guys have seen, if you're watching on YouTube, Alan changed settings here. Derrick Harmon is there, which is, shout again. He's checked all the boxes on the field and off the field. Absolutely. No one would have blamed him, obviously, for not being there today. But just awesome from him. Awesome person. If you weren't already rooting for him, I think that you certainly are now. But I want to move on to what we could, unless you guys have more to say about Derrick Harmon. I wanted to kind of get DB. You mentioned your thoughts. You wrote who the best players still on the board are. I know the Steelers got quite a wait here until we get to pick 83. So board could look much different. But if you just quickly want to maybe go through who some of those guys are that maybe you were a little bit surprised didn't sneak into round one, are the best value in round two, if there's any that you feel like could potentially fall to 83, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, just for me specifically, when I'm doing like my big board, it's really just based on like the film more than anything else. So like this was a class that was really unique because a lot of the top prospects either didn't have the final collegiate season that they wanted. Some of that was injury related. So some of the guys just have like those type of red flags. Mike Green has got some serious off the field stuff that he, has attached to his profile. So he's the top guy for me in terms of just talent. Will Johnson, injuries concerns. Some of the other like top name players available for me, Donovan Ezaraku, Boston College. I thought that he was a candidate to go 19 to the Bucks. They ended up taking Emeka Egbuka instead. Luther Burden, definitely a lot of like, character type personality stuff surrounding him, but he didn't necessarily have the season he wanted his final year at Missouri. But then there are just some other guys that I think I'm just a little bit higher on than consensus. Braden Swinson from LSU, Kevin Winston, safety from Penn State. I like his game a lot. And then Kyle Williams, wide receiver from Washington State. Those are kind of some brand guys for me with second round grades, guys that I think are gonna make a team really, really happy today. And whoever gets them has a player that I think will outshoot wherever they get picked.
Alan, other than the obvious, Shador Sanders not going in the first round, was there anybody else that didn't go that you were like surprised we didn't see go? And like who are your top guys that are still available?
Will Johnson, I know there's been some medical stuff there. I thought he would go in the first round. I think in general, I was a little bit surprised by the offensive linemen that went. Like, I didn't think that all of the guards would get into the first round. Like, guys like Booker and Simmons and Zabel. Like, I was a little surprised there was 3 guards there. The edges got pushed down as Araku. You mentioned Mike Green, not in the first round. I thought that's probably the give and take there. That maybe you would have seen one or two of those guys go instead. Was a little maybe surprised that Max Harrison went. Not like super shocked, but like a little bit surprised.
NFL loves traits, man, at the corner position.
I know. This round 2 looks stacked at corner still, though.
Oh, yeah,
with
sure.
Johnson there, Amos, Morrison, Rebel. It's a really good second round at cornerback. Like, and then Amos. The edges that are left combined with like some other edges, like Nick Scourton was someone that people thought could maybe get into the first round.
I put him in the first.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of. It's going to be like a corner edge heavy second round, I think.
Speaking of. I wanted to ask you, I put this out yesterday. I was going back I had to look. I had 26 out of 32 first rounders, which like is meh compared to honestly most years, but I had 8 correct player team fits. Did you guys go back at all and look at how you did in terms of that? By the way, Alan, I will say Malachi Starks to the Ravens. What did I tell you on the afternoon drive?
You did. I only got three correct player team fits.
DB, do you know? Did you?
This is going to be sacrilegious, but I didn't do a first round mock draft this year.
Whoa! You didn't?
I did not.
Wow.
I usually do because I usually have a couple buddies of mine that come over for the draft. So typically, what I do is I do the streams beforehand, and then I hop off, and then I have people over, and we usually do like a little competition. And I just, with everything I got going on with draft prep, personal life, all that stuff, I just didn't have time to do one. So yeah, I didn't. I can tell you right now, I would have had Travis Hunter going number 2. I would not have had Cleveland being dumb enough to trade back to 5 to pass him up. But no, there were definitely a lot of pairings that I felt like made sense. I didn't feel like it was an overly surprising first round for the most part. Did you guys feel that way?
No.
Yeah, I felt like it was pretty standard. Like even like the guys that I mentioned that fell out of the first round, it's kind of easy to connect the dots on why that was. And even like guys like I don't think Maxwell Harris did deserve to necessarily. The tape itself deserved to be a first round pick, but the guy's got jetpacks on his feet. So I understand why you would take a chance on a guy like that at the end of the first round if you just really believe in the player. So yeah, it was an interesting one.
I put him in the first round. I was hearing like a lot of Packers smoke for Harrison.
He is very
with him being invited to the draft. Yeah,
they love guys that can't play but are really athletic in the first round. They love guys like that.
Yeah, I know. A friend of the show,
Lucas Van Ness.
Friend of the show, Jake Shavinko will be on my live stream later.
Make sure you tell him I said that.
He's fired up about Matthew Golden for sure. So
he should be
excited about that.
Should be. Good player.
All right, so let's talk.
Maybe this is a hot take, but I think the Browns made the right decision by trading out of that pick. They traded away the best prospect in the draft in the last 5 years. But do you just want to be the Detroit Lions with Barry Sanders? Like they are so far away from competing that even if Travis Hunter turns out to be the best player in the NFL, they will not even win a playoff game because of him. What's the upside? Where are you going with that? I don't know.
I don't know, Alan. I can't get on board there. How far away do you think they are from competing?
12 players.
Like how many years?
Oh, like 3 or 4.
I mean, I think Travis Hunter is going to be one of the best players in the NFL in 3 or 4 years. So I think help him compete,
you can significantly accelerate that timeline by doing. The mistake I think they made is 5 was too far down. They should have tried to go down just one pick.
Yeah,
probably still would have got a lot. And
you could convince me that they
Abdul Carter is a lot better than Mason Graham.
Yeah, I do agree with that for sure. I think the where I kind of differ is just like I thought that Hunter was so very obviously the best player in the class, and even the Carter thing would have made sense, especially if you could have. I don't think you could have gotten a first round pick out of it, but if you could have gotten like a significant haul to go down and take Carter,
if you got 34 from the Giants, you go down and take Carter anyway, and then trade Myles Garrett, and you probably get a whole bunch more.
That's the kind of confusing thing to me too. Is like the Browns are kind of stuck in between what they want to do. Garrett wants out. They give him this massive contract. They're not really necessarily ready to win. They trade away from what I think is like a really, really special player. They take an undersized defensive tackle who's not great at stopping the run. They still don't have a quarterback. They're multiple years away. I just think that the first round pick next year, I understand that it might be good ammo to go get a quarterback, but they're going to be bad. They're going to be at the top of the draft anyway. They're going to get a quarterback next year. So maybe that helps them get the guy. And I think it's premature to say that it's the worst move ever, even though that's really how I feel right now, because you want to see how it all pans out. But to me, as soon as it happened, I immediately thought about the Julio thing that they did over a decade ago. And we saw how that turned out. We'll see if Travis Hunter ends up being like that caliber of player. But Julio's about to get a gold jacket in 5 years, and Brandon Whedon's playing golf somewhere right now or doing accounting work or something. I don't know.
I think it's also, and not to say that it's going to go great in Jacksonville either, but I think it's also easier to envision having a guy play two ways with an established quarterback.
Yeah.
Like how hard is it going to be for him to come in? Oh, is it Kenny Pickett or is it Joe Flacco? Or I don't know, maybe they're drafting Jalen Milroe or whatever. Like I just, that's going to make that process a lot more difficult for Travis Hunter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited about having him in Jacksonville as somebody who's a Trevor Lawrence dynasty owner. I'm thrilled. I don't have to watch the Steelers face him twice a year. I got T-Law on my fantasy team. We're chilling.
This isn't, obviously we're not a Jaguars podcast, but something I brought up, and I don't know how much this is going to play into it, but I was thinking about like with the humidity and stuff there, is that going to affect his way to be able to play as many snaps there as it would somewhere else?
I don't know. One of the most insanely conditioned players I think I've ever seen.
Know.
I mean, he was running down plays from, the backside of the formation.
Hey, I get it. It's a random thought that popped in my head.
No. I do get, I totally get. I don't think there's any way that you can play. I say this, but James Gladstone literally just did a press conference on this about not putting boundaries on players. I don't think there's any way you can play.
Yeah, well, he also pretty definitively said he wasn't trading Christian Kirk, and then look how that
you just can't play. I'm interested to see what the distribution of labor is going to be. I really do. I think he can change the sport. I'm just excited to see how it plays out. I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating. I'm so glad it's not going to be as a Cleveland Brown, though.
I think it's very hard to be a part-time cornerback. I think it's easy to be a part-time wide receiver.
You end up siloing some of your coverage stuff. And
yeah. If you're a full-time corner, you can play 10 to 15 snaps a wide receiver, no problem. The other way, I'm not sure is possible.
Yeah.
Let me bring this back to the Steelers here. A question that we got from Josh, and this is going to tie into two different things, I think, here. So pick 83 right now, the next Steelers selection. Running back, obviously we didn't take one in round one. That's a position that we're still looking at. Who do you think is a really good fit that could potentially still be on the board there at 83 for them to take?
Well, I mocked Dylan Sampson to them, so I guess I'll stick with that because I think they really like him. I think he's a good fit. Young guy. Low mileage, low usage in college. Didn't play until he was third-year guy. Super explosive. Seems like if you look at the running backs they brought in, like it wasn't a lot of bigger guys. Seems like that's what they're looking for is that home run hitter ability. I think he has that. Good receiver. There's like 5 guys, though, in the third round that could be good fits for the Steelers.
I was just saying you mocked them. Dylan Sampson, obviously, he's still on the board, so like you don't necessarily have to pivot. But I didn't know if the way that the board fell at all to round 2 would make you pivot at all.
No, only if they had taken a running back.
Yeah, DB.
Yeah, I like the Sampson shout. Love the tempo and pacing that he runs with. Man, like I think he's got pretty good contact balance, creative runner, a little bit undersized for sure. But again, we're talking about a committee that's just life of, really where the NFL. Game is right now. You want multiple running backs to do multiple different things. A little bit concerned a bit about some of the pass protection and pass game impact, but they have Jalen Warren, Kenny Gainwell. So, I mean, that eases some of my concerns there. Other guys that I would keep in mind are like it may be a little bit early for Bashal Tootin, but I think he's actually going to go on day 2. I kind of mocked him to the Steelers in round 4. I thought that was his absolute floor. They could take him in the 3rd round. I love the scheme fit, very outside zone friendly, good outside the numbers, home run hitter speed. Allen talked about the guys that they brought in can all like rip explosive plays. And I think that's that along with getting a back in the room that's actually comfortable running their most popular rushing concepts, outside zone, mid zone. That is my preference for this offense. They've got the in-between the tackles guy and Jalen Warren. They got Kenny Gainwell, a nice, depth piece, pass protection guy. I want them to get a perimeter runner, and that's something that Tootin can do. Other guys that they brought in, I think Caleb Johnson's a fantastic fit. He's probably not going to make it there all the way to 83, although he might because he is more scheme-specific than other backs in this class. Who knows where that's going to all shake out. DJ Giddens, for me, is someone that I see very polarizing opinions about, but I would personally not consider Giddens until the 4th round. I think if they took him in the 3rd, it's just a little bit too rich for my personal liking. But, yeah, those names keep it on.
I'll throw Devin Neal in there, too, even though I think he's probably more of a 4th round guy, but it's possible.
At least 2 more things I definitely want to hit on, because within that same thing, I don't know, I wanted to ask you guys about Jerry Dulac's tweet talking about watch for running back, but he mentioned edge in there at the end as well. Is that something that we need to keep an eye on from anything that either of you are heard or thinking is a direction they could go?
No, I think the only 2 edges there was any real connection to in the pre-draft process was Jordan Birch and Elijah Roberts, both of which are tweeners that you could basically consider defensive tackles. I do think they're small at edge. Alex Highsmith's the biggest one they got. When they brought in Preston Smith, he did play edge and a little bit of 5 tech and even a little bit of 3 tech. I think someone like that would be interesting to the team. I just can't imagine it rising to the top of their wish list in round 3.
Yeah, I agree with what Alan's saying. I like the idea. I think you could sell me on the idea that you can never have too many pass rushers, right? Everybody loves that. But with the Preston Smith thing, or maybe just wanting a bigger body type, Elijah Roberts does make sense. He's more of a day 3 guy in my opinion, probably 5th round ish is where I would probably consider him. But yeah, Roberts is a guy, he played over the B gap a good amount, so got heavy hands.
I understand the logic. A lot of this, we're talking about molding after the Eagles, right? And continue to just go trenches, which I fully understand and would fully endorse. But it's when you don't have the ammo to check the other boxes and also do that, I don't know how that could be a direction they go. At the same time,
they're going to score 10 points next year.
We've talked a lot about double dipping at defensive tackle. I would say if they're getting a bigger edge, a Preston Smith style edge, that basically means that they're not double dipping at defensive tackle and they're just going D tackle, big edge. And I don't think so would you go D tackle back-to-back picks here? Would you be if the 3rd round pick is Joshua Farmer or someone like that, are you okay with that?
What's the rest of the board look like? I could be talked into it if he's clearly the best or at least close to the best player on the board. I don't know. I really like Joshua Farmer, so
when I was walking out here, I walked by Andy Weidel walking in, so that's what put that into my head. Is what's Andy cooking over there? Another defensive lineman.
Yeah, I would struggle to see that as my preferred.
Right. What the board look like?
Yeah, but it does depend on the board.
I friggin' love Josh Farmer, so I'm not going to fight him if they make that pick. But I doubt it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Dang, there was something else involved. Oh, George Pickens. Diana Rossini put out that they were taking calls on George. Still, is that one of those things hey, draft's coming up, Steelers don't have a 2nd round pick, maybe they'll float out there that they'll listen on him or put that out there, so if they can get a 2nd round offer from somebody, they would consider it? Or what do we make of that?
Yeah, I'm sure they'd consider it, although the Packers drafting Matthew Golden, I think, eliminated the best chance for there to be a George Pickens trade. Cowboys, I guess, maybe. I think I'm pretty skeptical that's going to happen, but I think
saw the Titans and Raiders floated out there as well as teams that would be interested. They both picked super high in the 2nd, though. So
Raiders just going to take Jaden Higgins or someone like that.
Yeah. Now, I guess could you get there that high 2 with George and something else? I don't know.
Probably.
I don't know. DB, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll listen. I don't necessarily think that they're gonna, get out over their skis and make it a priority to deal in. I think they'll listen though, and they would be smart to listen to offers, but they shouldn't deal in for scraps. You know what I'm saying? If you're not getting anything back, I would say for me the baseline I would need like a top 75 pick. Like I would need a really early 3rd round pick at the very worst, because at least then you're getting ahead of like some of the stuff that I think is, probably coming in the coming months. He is an impending free agent on the last year of his rookie contract. I think one thing that does make it a little more complicated, and something I would probably be extremely in favor of trading him, and maybe I would expand that range a little bit more if I liked the receiver class. I just am super down on the receiver class comparative to consensus. So, figuring out how to replace him, even if you could get somebody with less overlap in skill set, or at least like usage from DK would be smart. But I think they'll listen. I'm not necessarily sure that they're actually going to find a trade partner, though.
I think they may, very similarly to the 49ers last year with Brandon Ayuk, be in a position where they would almost have to ask for another wide receiver plus a draft pick back. Like Smitty and I talked about, like if it was Green Bay, like Wicks and a pick, or maybe if it's Dallas, it's, I don't know.
Well, they don't have no receivers. You don't want any of those guys.
Jalen Tolbert?
Yeah, maybe. Like Jalen Tolbert in a 3rd. I think I'd do that. I don't know. There's not, like that's almost what they would need, I think, to make that trade make a lot of sense. Unless, and I think I've said this before, like they're just so convinced that he's going to cause problems that they just want rid of him. But like they're not acting like that's what they want to do. Like they're not like out here push. Like I feel like if they thought that, they would be more aggressive about finding a trade partner.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're about to get out of here, but Alan sounds like he's sticking with his Dylan Sampson pick. DB, I'm putting you on the spot as to who pick 83 is going to be.
I lean towards running back or quarterback. I don't think it's necessarily like my favorite option, but I think Will Howard potentially, maybe. I don't know. They've got to add 2 quarterbacks at some point before training camp. So I don't know. It's got to come from somewhere. One of these like quarterbacks they've shown a lot of interest in, brought a bunch of them in for a pre-draft visit. They went to a bunch of these guys' pro days. Howard's going to be there, I would assume, at pick 82. I think they would consider that. The Dylan Sampson shout's a good one. Bashal Tutin's a good one. I think it'll be quarterback or running back. But if I had to, absolutely guess, I'd probably say Will Howard.
Let me ask, obviously, like, not going to get a haul for doing so, but any thought to moving back at this pick?
The opposite, maybe, I think.
Really?
I think I love the 2nd round of this draft, and they do have all those comp picks next year. Like, if you could flip like a 4th or a 5th next year to move up in the 3rd round, or move up maybe even to the back of the 2nd, I would be very happy about that. I think the quality of player drops off pretty significantly from like 75 to 100, and they're right in that gradient.
I'm going to go a little bit off the, I don't want to say off the wall. We've known of the interest here, but like we got a running back and a quarterback discussed here for who this pick's going to be. So I'm going to go with a different position group. I'm going to go with Andrew Makuba, the safety out of Texas.
God, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be so awesome. That may be like I'm not gonna lie, that may be like a break my sobriety type of moment. It might be.
Is he going to be available? I have no clue. He's available when I'm running the simulation right now. So
that's I had him going 76 to the Cowboys, so very, very possible.
In that range.
I'll throw another one out there that I had in that range was Charles Grant from the offensive lineman from William & Mary. Showed a lot of interest in him. And I think that's where they would need to take him if they want him.
Good stuff. All
right, guys. Well, I got a jet. Hopefully we're getting Derrick Harmon here shortly, but good fun. And I'll let you guys do the outro.
Good stuff. All right. See you later. The incomparable Alan Saunders. as always. But no, we're wrapping up here. So, DB, you know what time of the podcast it is. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, at Steelers_DB on Twitter, YouTube. All my written work can be found at SteelersNow.com. Like I said, I wrote a big scouting report on Derrick Harmon. So if you guys are interested in that, I'm sure Alan and those folks, Aaron, going to have plenty of coverage for you guys throughout day 2. I will be streaming on my YouTube channel up until the first pick tonight. So if you got time between watching this video, you want to pop over there, talk some ball, ask some questions, hang out before we get started on night 2. Like I said, this is our time to shine, brother. Like, this is our favorite night of the year. I'm really excited, and I'll be in Smitty's stream a little bit later tonight.
Hey, you don't got to ever stop when it comes to the content. We're going right from afternoon drive to DB's
just
live
channel to channel.
So, be back right here. If you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Hit that notification bell. That way, you know when we go live. We'll be right around 7 p.m. Myself, Tyler, again, Drew will be with us. Sarge, I think at some point maybe joining. Actually, Tyler's not going to be with me right away. He's joining like halfway through. So I'll be there. Drew will be there. Jake Shavenko, I mentioned, will be joining as well. One of the best in the business, in my opinion, in terms of his breakdowns and super in depth and understanding of the game. Super knowledgeable. So excited for that. And yeah, come watch along alongside DB. If you're listening somewhere else to the afternoon drive, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe over there, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts from. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing over on TikTok, and then you will find me, of course, at Zachary Smith PGH. For Derrick Bell, Alan Saunders earlier, and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.